Hi, Dr. John here on my Daily Doctor, where a couple times a week I go over headlines that you've probably heard over the past few days, and I get in depth behind those headlines so you have an understanding of what that means, and particularly what it means for you, your family, your loved ones, and your community, and hopefully give you some information you can walk away with to help you get through this pandemic as healthy as possible and as soon as possible. And then I answer questions. So if you have questions, please send them our way. They're almost always fantastic questions and things that typically I don't think about or other experts think about, but they're questions that people have, and they're often very, very good questions. But let me start with the headlines first. So the first one you probably heard about is Johnson & Johnson. Their vaccine has gotten its emergency use authorization, and it's gotten through the CDC to recommend how to give it, where to give it, when to give it, all those things. And so today is Monday, March 1st. Trucks should start rolling today, get distribution tomorrow, start distributing this across the country, and within the next couple of days, people start getting shots in arms. Now, I'll talk about that vaccine in a minute, why that's so important, but so just to walk you through the process of what happened. Friday, VRBPAC, which is the Vaccine and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, that's the CDC's independent committee of experts that meets, and they decide on a single question the FDA gives them. And that question was, do the benefits of this vaccine outweigh any potential issues it might have, especially considering we're in the midst of the pandemic? And thumbs up, unanimous. I watched the voting go on Friday. Not the most exciting thing, but it was worth watching. And they voted unanimous, yes, we think this should go ahead and go forward for the emergency use authorization. On Saturday, the FDA gave it its emergency use authorization, which is essentially the legal paperwork it takes to authorize that. Sunday, ACIP meet, that's the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. They're the committee that meets to advise the CDC on, and they give them recommendations on how the shot should be given, how it should be transported, who it should be given to, all those things. And they said, yes, we agree with the emergency use authorization, 18 plus. It takes normal refrigeration, does not take that ultra cold storage that the other vaccines have issues with. It should be easier to distribute. It's a one-dose vaccine. Again, 18 and above. And then on Sunday, yesterday as well, the CDC director, Dr. Walensky, went and signed off on that recommendation. And so it's to the point now where it's got its authorization, it's got its recommendation, and it's ready to get shots in arms. Now remember, this is a single dose shot, but it's out there. They expect to have 10 million vaccines over the next month or so, 100 million by the end of June, although production delays are thought to be happening, so it might be a little later than that, but sometime in the summer, 100 million vaccines, which is important because if you look at the vaccines right now, and I'm looking at the vaccine tracker the CDC puts out, to date they have had 50 million people vaccinated, at least one shot. They've had 25 million have two shots, and so that means there's 25 million out there that are still waiting to get their second dose. These numbers are going to change a bit because now remember, Johnson & Johnson is only a one-dose shot versus Pfizer and Moderna, which you require two doses 3 to 4 weeks apart depending on which shot you get. As of now, people that have been fully vaccinated have gotten their two doses, 10% of the population. If you've heard recently about herd immunity, which is the amount of people in a community, as in the country, that need to be vaccinated in order to get enough immunity to where those who aren't vaccinated are protected as well, we're talking around anywhere from 70 to 85%, depending who you talk to. And so we're down to 10%. We still need a lot more vaccinated. And so getting those shots is going to be important, and getting them as quickly as possible, because the sooner we get people vaccinated, the sooner we get closer to herd immunity, the sooner we're going to get this pandemic under control. And the less variants we're going to have, because those variants are mutations that happen when the virus gets in our body. If they don't get in our body, then they're not going to mutate. And so the sooner we get to that herd immunity level, the less we'll have to worry about these variants that are happening right now. But the question I get asked a lot is, okay, look at the numbers here because of what's called the efficacy level. Basically, in the human trials, they looked at how effective these vaccines were at stopping certain things. The efficacy level is essentially the effectiveness of how well it stops COVID, the disease. Because in these studies, they looked at the disease itself. Did it stop people from getting the disease or getting moderate or severe disease? And on top of that, did it prevent hospitalizations? Did it prevent deaths? What they didn't look at is, did it prevent transmissions? In other words, could I have the virus, not be having any symptoms, so I don't really have COVID, but I have the virus inside my body? Could I give it to somebody else? They don't do that in these human trials because these trials are done looking specifically at disease, but they're going to do them in the longer term trials that are going on right now. And what we're seeing in some countries like Israel that has a high vaccination rate, and areas like nursing homes that have high vaccination rates, we're seeing that amount of transmission being cut dramatically. So we do think it's going to aid in reducing that transmission, which is important. But the numbers people have gotten stuck on a little bit is Johnson & Johnson came out saying here in the U.S., it's different around the world, but here in the U.S., it's 72% effective. They hear that number and they compare it to Pfizer and Moderna, which is 95% effective, 94.1 for Moderna, 95 for Pfizer. But you have to realize it's almost comparing apples to oranges because they looked at different things. When Pfizer and Moderna did their study, they looked at any COVID disease. So if somebody had sniffles, they said, okay, they have COVID. Did this shot protect them from getting that, getting those, even those sniffles? Whereas with the Johnson & Johnson, they were a little more deliberate and they said, we want to make sure it prevents moderate to severe disease. And so they looked at that. And what they found is that it prevents moderate to severe disease at that 72% level, which is, and you really can't compare it to the 95% level. But the one thing you can compare, and this is one thing I want to make sure that everybody understands, is all three of these vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, did look at one thing the same. And that one thing that looked the same is hospitalizations and deaths. Did it prevent them? And anyone who got the Pfizer vaccine, anyone who got the Moderna vaccines, anyone who got double dose on the Pfizer vaccine, anyone who got double dose on the Moderna vaccine, or anyone who got single dose on the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, none of those participants died or were hospitalized because of COVID. As a matter of fact, going through the numbers here, Moderna, around 15,000 people got the vaccine. None of them died. None of them were hospitalized. Pfizer, over 18,000 got it. None of them died. None of them were hospitalized. Johnson & Johnson, over 22,000 got the vaccine in human trials. None of them died. None of them were hospitalized because of COVID. So again, it's important to realize that at the end of the day, not being hospitalized, not getting complications from COVID, not dying from COVID is the important endpoint here, and they all did a fantastic job. Now, does this mean it's 100% effective at preventing hospitalizations and deaths? No, but in the trial, that's what they found. So it's very, very effective at that. And what I typically say is, if at the end of the day you get sniffles because you have COVID, it lasts 2 or 3 days, it goes away, you have no serious or long-term consequences because of that, that's a win for the vaccine. The vaccine did its job, and that's what we're hoping that people understand. So, because people are balking at getting the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, or at least questioning it, because they're saying, I want that higher level of effectiveness. But again, when you look at those numbers, they compare two different things. So you have to realize that. But speaking of numbers, looking at numbers here across the country and what we're seeing right now, and just to let people know that here in the United States, as of yesterday, a little over 50,000 cases. That's a huge drop from the 30,000 cases we had, or 300,000 cases we had a couple of months ago, which was the peak of our pandemic. We knew that was going to happen after the holidays and all the holiday travel and get together. Didn't quite expect it to go that high, but it went very, very high. Now we're down to 50,000, a little over 50,000 a day of cases. However, you have to remember that back last summer, around June timeframe, we were down to 20,000 and wanted to drive that even lower down to 10,000. Obviously, zero is the point we wanted to get to. But right now at 50,000, it could still go up or it could go down more. We need it to go down more, which means we still need to do these things. And so I know we're all tired of wearing masks. I know we're all tired of social distancing. I know we're all tired of not getting together, but you have to be careful. We still have to do that. We're making headway here. We need to continue to make that headway. So again, looking at the three different things, Johnson & Johnson, it's got its emergency use authorization. When people look at the numbers, sometimes they say they question Johnson & Johnson versus the other one, but the numbers they did compare directly, hospitalizations and deaths, all three across the board protected significantly from hospitalizations and death. As a matter of fact, in the trials, 100% protection from those things. And then the numbers themselves were down to a little over 50,000, which is great. And I know a lot of times I do it per 100,000, and often we've been much higher in the 40 range per 100,000, even higher. Right now we're a little over 15 per 100,000. So doing a good job there. Just need to keep that coming down even more. And I know we're coming into the summer months, or at least people planning for the summer months. And so we need to be careful, or spring break as well. Be careful that we don't do that kind of travel or get together, because those numbers will go higher. So now let me see if you have any questions.
I'm in my 60s. When can I get vaccinated?
So the question is, somebody in their 60s, when can they get vaccinated? It's going to be very dependent on your state. Here in Colorado, they just authorized vaccinations for 60 and above starting March 5th. So that's this coming Friday. They're expanding the pool of who can get vaccinated because they feel that they've gotten through the healthcare workers, or at least the ones that want to get vaccinated at this point, and the ones they're able to reach and can, get the vaccines into. And then they said, 70 and above. Now they're saying 60 and above. Other states have a variety of different requirements for who can get vaccinated at this stage, so just keep an eye on that. If you want to do this, the easy way to do it, it's difficult sometimes to constantly go on the internet and constantly try to track down your state public health department or your governor or the social media, all that. NBC is doing that for you, and they actually have a website called planyourvaccine.com. Again, planyourvaccine.com, all spelled out. And on there, you can put your state down, you can put an email down, and they will notify you when things in your state change. And what they do is they look at the public health departments, they look at the social media that comes out of the governor's office, the public health departments, they listen in on press briefings. They do all those things to give you that up-to-date information. They also include pharmacies in your area that have the vaccine. With a caveat, they want you to call ahead before you go just to make sure that, whether you have to get an appointment, whether the vaccine's been used up for the day, those types of things. But again, planyourvaccine.com is a great way to track that, and it's very state dependent.
If the vaccines are safe, why are people dying and having bad reactions to the vaccine?
So the question is, if the vaccines are safe, why are people dying or having bad reactions to the vaccine? The honest answer is they really aren't. And if you look at the numbers of people that have died after getting the vaccine, the last number I saw was around 120, 128, but none of those were directly attributed to the vaccine. Those were all attributed to people having the normal things that people have that they unfortunately do die from, just happen to have gotten a vaccine before that. So whether the thinking is that whether they got the vaccine or not, they probably still would have suffered the event that unfortunately precluded their death. But if you look at the numbers, and I like to tell people this, but you have to think very closely about what I'm saying. Right now, there's been no direct correlation of anybody dying from the vaccine. There's the one doctor in Florida that did have a condition, a platelet condition, that he eventually died from, but they still haven't been able to directly relate it to the vaccine or rule it out from the vaccine, so they're working on that. But the other ones, the vast majority of those, and I believe it's over 80% of those, were nursing home residents who were very sick to begin with, got the vaccines, and then unfortunately eventually died over the next couple of weeks. But again, they're not directly attributing that to the vaccines. But if you look at the number itself of coronavirus and looking at the total cases, so we've had 28 million cases of coronavirus. We've had over 500,000 deaths. 28 million cases of coronavirus, over 500,000 deaths. Right now, over 25 million people are fully vaccinated against coronavirus, and none of those vaccines have caused death that can be directly attributed to the vaccine. So again, looking at those numbers, your chances of dying from COVID are much, much higher than any theoretical chance of dying from the vaccine or having adverse reactions. The anaphylaxis reactions that we heard about have been very few and far between. There were some Bell's palsy reactions in studies. Have not seen those in people getting the vaccines over the last couple months. It is proving to be a very safe vaccine and is proving to be a very effective vaccine. And now we have a third one as well.
Can you get COVID more than once?
Can you get COVID more than once? Yes. And actually, looking at the latest study, it looks like a certain percentage of people, very small percentage, have been getting COVID a second time. And this happens, we think, for a variety of reasons. One might be the variants that you're hearing about, where the variants are mutations that change a little bit. And because they change a little bit, they're able to sneak around your immune system that's already primed because you had COVID one time. The other issue is the COVID immunity itself, which we call the natural immunity from getting infected with COVID. We think that wears off after about 3 months. We're not sure how long it lasts, but we think 3 months is about the time limit it lasts, and after that you're just susceptible to getting COVID again. But with the vaccine, we know the vaccine gives you a very robust immune response, and we think that's going to last at least a year, looking at booster shots to see what's going to happen over the next few months. So, time will tell whether we need booster shots at a year, or 3 years, or 5 years, but gives you much more protection than the natural immunity you might get from having COVID in and of itself.
Will vaccines be required for travel?
That's a great question. Will vaccines be required for travel? I think the answer is it depends on where you go and what that government entity is doing or looking at. Now, countries around the world right now are looking to open up their tourism because that is one way they can help jumpstart their economy, especially this coming summer, because obviously summer is a big tourism season, especially here in the United States. A lot of people travel both in the country and outside the country. There are certain countries that have already said, hey, if you are vaccinated, then we're looking at you not having to quarantine when you come here. Iceland, Estonia, the country of Georgia, Cyprus, they are all looking at saying, hey, if you have a vaccine, if you're fully vaccinated and you can prove to us you're fully vaccinated, you won't need to quarantine when you come in here. If you're not vaccinated, you're going to have to quarantine for 2 weeks, which is going to be very, very difficult on a vacation. If you have a 1 week vacation, you have to quarantine 2 weeks before you even can leave the hotel room. But my guess is over the next couple months, you're going to see more and more countries. The EU, the European Union, is already talking about how can we use these to get people into the country and doing things they want to do tourism-wise, using these vaccine passports, as people call them. There's a lot of debate going on right now about the ethics behind these passports, about people that haven't gotten the shot, can't get the shot, won't get the shot, should they be precluded from being able to travel? That discussion is going on heavily. The discussion is even going on at the Olympics because they're trying to figure out what's going to happen at this first international meeting we've had since the start of the pandemic, which is going to happen in July and August. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But my guess is there's going to be some type or multiple types of vaccine passports that you're going to have to use to get into certain countries or be able to do certain things without quarantining. If you think about it historically, and being in the military, we always had to have our yellow fever card with us that showed that we had our yellow fever vaccines, because if we ever got deployed to a country that required it, we had to be able to show that. And that's the same for civilians as well. To get to certain countries, you had to have a yellow fever vaccine card that was given to you by the World Health Organization. Now that is similar to what they're talking about here, that if you have this vaccine passport showing you've fully been vaccinated against COVID, then they might be able to let you in and not have to have you quarantined. Probably still have to test this, for COVID every now and then, but at least the quarantine is not part of this. But again, time will tell, but don't be surprised if that happens. And the other thing is, don't be surprised if it happens. They say, hey, if you want to go to a concert, if you want to go to a game, any of those things, then you might need a passport to be able to do that, or at least to do it without having to test or quarantine or any of those other things. But time will tell, and we'll probably know more over the next couple of months. Thank you for your questions. They've been fantastic. And again, going over the headlines, Johnson & Johnson has gotten its emergency use authorization from the FDA. It's been recommended from the CDC. Trucks are going to roll probably today, and people will probably start getting shots in arms over the next couple of days. It's a one-shot dose versus Pfizer and Moderna, which are 2 shots. So for some people, that's going to be very don't want that second shot. The side effects, headache, fatigue, muscle pain were the main ones people complained about. They also complained about low-grade fevers, injection site soreness, those typical things you get with shots. This is not any different than what we're seeing with Pfizer and Moderna. Some people are saying, okay, should I wait for Pfizer and Moderna because of this effectiveness being lower in this? No, and mainly because that effectiveness number you see was calculated differently than the other ones, so you really can't compare the two. But what you can compare is the bottom line of all 3 vaccines. Anyone in the human trials, and I just want to repeat it again, anyone in the human trials that had the vaccine was fully vaccinated, none of them, we're talking over 50,000 people, were hospitalized or died from COVID. That's a great bottom line to have. And then finally, the numbers were down to a little above 50,000 a day, which is a great drop from the 300,000 we had a while ago, but we still have room to go. We want to get down to 10,000 if we can, even lower. 0 would be perfect. But in the meanwhile, I hope you have a fantastic week. I hope things go as planned for you this week. And more importantly, I hope you, your family, your loved ones, and your community all stay as happy and as healthy as you can. Thanks.
Are you a fan of our videos? Be sure to subscribe to Worldwide Campus News and Entertainment. Then ring the bell to see all notifications about the new videos and the latest video.